Today you are in the session with us for a few minutes on lessons learned from our Degrees with Less Debt research. And my name is Laura Winter. For those of you whom I've not met, I am the Executive Director of St. Louis Graduates. And joining me today are the co-chairs of St. Louis Graduates, Melissa Findley of Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation, and Trent Ball of Southeast Missouri State University. And you'll hear from them in a minute. But first, some context about who we are to introduce ourselves. St. Louis Graduates is a network of K-12 and higher education, youth-serving nonprofit organizations, business and philanthropy, all focused on eliminating equity gaps in degree completion for Black students and for low-income students. And while St. Louis is in our name, our work and our impact is truly statewide. And so 3 quick initiatives you may have heard about. Our Professional Development Institute annually trains about 600 high school counselors across the state of Missouri on strategies to support post-secondary planning around college and career for high school students. Our Post-Secondary Equity Network engages 16 colleges and universities across Missouri and Southern Illinois, and some community partners, on advancing institutional strategies that support greater equity for low-income and Black students. And we are a founding partner of My Scholarship Central, which, if you're not familiar, is an online free tool connecting Missouri students to private scholarship dollars and interest-free loan programs. But today, we are here to share with you some of our research, which is called Degrees with Less Debt. And I put into the chat the link to dwldstl.org, where you can find the reports and our 3-episode video series. And it all started with a big question, which is identifying which colleges in Missouri and in Southern Illinois are enrolling significant percentages of low-income students and Black students, and giving them the support that they need to graduate with little debt. And when we took that question, we started to look at the data from an iPads and College Scorecard public data availability. And then we also asked some questions of the people who are involved in those institutions. And as a result, we produced 2 reports and 3 videos that we encourage you to take a peek at. So our methodology is both quantitative and qualitative, and for very important reasons, because if you just look at the numerical data, the quantitative data, it produced a ranking. It gave us some sense of which colleges stand out, but it didn't tell us why. And that's actually a much more important question. Because at the end of the day, what we want to know is, what are these colleges doing that is really supporting our students? And can we learn from that? Can we help to scale those effective practices and policies? And can others start to adopt them so that more students benefit? And so that really involved a lot of interviews with administrators and leaders at our colleges and universities, as well as focus groups with students who we view as the experts in the room, because students really are the people for whom our institutions exist. And today we're going to talk with you about one of the 4 themes that emerged in our 2020 Degrees with Less Debt research. It's all about affordability. And that's really kind of the theme of this next 3 days, isn't it? If students can't afford to go to college, then really everything else is kind of immaterial. We need to make sure they have the financial resources to not only get into school, but to stay in school and to be able to graduate with minimal debt. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, but just to touch on 3 other key themes that emerged. And I thought Martha Snyder's keynote this morning really touched on the intersectionality between affordability and other student supports. And that's what we see in our research as well. It really requires leadership and advocacy across the institution committed to equity. Really proactive and targeted supports for students, academic and otherwise. And not surprisingly, in today's world, the really important role that mental health supports and other wraparound supports play in making sure students have what they need. Increasingly, students have complex lives. They're working multiple jobs. Many of them are parents. They need to know that their institution's providing them the complete support that they need. So just for context setting, it's important to understand what we mean when we talk about affordability. And what we're really suggesting is that it's important it covers the full cost of attendance so that students can graduate with little to no debt. And unfortunately, that's increasingly challenging to do. Research from the National College Attainment Network suggests that less than half of colleges nationally and within our state are truly affordable for our lowest income students. And that presents a challenge because a lot of those costs then get shifted to the students themselves and increasingly to our institutions. And so, what can institutions do to make sure that college is truly affordable? And that's what we're here to talk about today. So, I'll now turn it over to my colleague Trent Ball, who's going to share some of the lessons around affordability that we've seen in the Degrees with Less Debt research. Trent?
Thank you, Laura. As Laura mentioned, affordability is the primary barrier our students encounter when trying to get in and through college. We believe there are four key strategies that institutions can use to make affordability a point up for their campus and for their students. Number one, adopting a multifaceted approach to student affordability and debt reduction. Number two, fostering transparency by streamlining the financial aid process, application as well as renewal. Developing a student-centered approach to financial aid, planning and financial literacy, which includes the idea of not just scholarship mining, but actually finding scholarships and outside funding to support their education. And number four, prioritizing need-based financial aid. These are not ranked in any order. These are just the ones we think are very clear and very important. The main point is our institutions must adopt a multifaceted approach that includes affordability as well as debt reduction. Only together can we find our students able to graduate with little to no debt, able to start their lives properly, launching without that financial burden we often see many of our students graduating with. Let's start with number one, some clear ideas designed by Cleveland College America to help students understand that the key point is focusing on time degree completion. So often our marker is 6 years. Well, that's going to be expensive no matter where you go to school. The main goal of Cleveland College America is to get students in and through in the 4-year process. They give us 3 key points to think about as institutions as well as people working with institutions. Number one, incentivizing students to take more credit hours per semester for a flat fee. There's a conversation had about, do we structure it for students to be able to say, okay, you're going to pay for 15 hours regardless, or you take 15 hours for this flat fee. Incentivizing that approach. Some institutions have designed programs that provide additional aid if you stay on time, or aid to take courses during their winter session or during the summer. Provide retention completion scholarships to help seniors graduate. That's key. It came up in our report in 2020. It was discussed in our 2017 report that a lot of students get to a certain point and run out of aid. They are in school X amount of time. That 6 years is going to take you through the structure of what you owe for financial aid. And remember, if a student starts at a community college and then comes to a 4-year institution, they're burning through those X amount of semesters you're able to get your Pell Grant. So getting scholarships and having funds available for seniors is very important. And number 3, focus on fewer and large institutional awards. A lot of times we love to break awards up. Oh, here's 200 here, here's 300 there. Students have to be able to understand what those awards are, if they're renewable or not, and how to retain those awards as they move through the process. Fewer large institutional awards are easier to understand and more clear about what the focus is, which is graduating on time. We want to make sure our students are not piecemealing their aid together each year and being so concerned they can't make it. As our student quotes here, I'd use all financial aid, name administrator pointing me to the senior degree provision program scholarship. And I was a recipient of that in my senior year, and it helped me graduate because I was out of financial aid. So often our process has become more cumbersome for our students because we think it's clearer for us, but we're the experts who understand it. We have to make sure students understand how they use their aid, when they use their aid, and what the aid actually can cover. A key point about this from our students is financial aid is complicated, especially for a first-gen student. Here are some clear ways to simplify the process. Number one, automatically apply students to institutional scholarships where they're eligible. Some of our institutions have designed a process where, as the students apply, they're automatically considered for scholarships. It's taking a step out. Number two, be transparent about aid available and criteria to renew. That is so key. I know sometimes people think it's an odd piece, but a lot of programs I work with, we contract our students. And that contract reminds them every year what the renewal criteria actually are to keep their awards, as well as how much aid is available. We can't begin discussing the fall semester in August. We need to have that conversation in March. So we do a great job sometimes of helping students for first year to get into the institution. What's our process for supporting them to understand their renewal criteria to keep those scholarships and those awards? and or apply for other awards that come forward during their time, either major specific or foundation specific. Number three, use multiple forms of communication, not just email. So often when we email the student, that should have been enough. We know right now our students are bombarded with emails and texts and TikTok. We have to make sure we meet students where they actually are and they understand when they see our information, it's important and critical. It's not just moved to the box. Helping our students understand how to prioritize their email information and the text information is just as important as providing the aid. And the last one, make financial aid advisors and staff accessible and helpful. Now, this was kind of close to me, really. I work consistently with our financial aid department, so I know that the opinion out there is not always good for financial aid. I have never had a problem working with our financial aid department on campus. I think the challenge often is that we assume that there's not the volume that does exist, that the staff is not necessarily accessible, but I believe that we have to train and help our students work with our financial aid departments to be successful. One thing that we think is also important here is just having a real honest discussion about need-based aid versus merit-based aid. Because so often our programs don't always clearly explain that. What is key is bringing clarity and transparency to financial aid offer letters. On our campus, we worked with U Aspire, which is an organization that partnered with us to help us make our financial aid letters more understandable, more accessible. Here are some key things to remember. Number one, avoid jargon. We love our acronyms, we love our jargon in higher ed, but our first-gen students or income students have never seen that information. We have to make sure they understand what we're talking about. Break down full cost of attendance. That is key. So building a budget, quite often the students say, well, I have my tuition covered. I should be okay. Separate out direct costs, tuition, fees, housing, indirect costs, books, etc. Spell out assumptions on enrollment and housing. Know there's a conversation about students always think, oh, it's cheap to live off campus. They assume that because they're paying it in pieces versus securing that on-campus housing, knowing you have a place to live. Now we got to find food to eat. There's a different conversation about that and what that actual cost will be. There's not a magical larger budget also for living off campus. List grants and scholarships separately. Because so often students assume, okay, they get their first year package, it's $24,000. They get the next year package, it's $23,000, $27,000. But sometimes scholarships or grants have been replaced with loans to get to that number. Make sure students identify what they're taking so they know what to accept, what to reject. List loans separately. I think a lot of students even can see Parent Plus loan and assume automatically, oh, that's something that my parents can take or they'll take from me, which goes into the idea of work study, Parent Plus. They both require additional steps. Work study may appear on an award letter, but if students have a job on campus, the work study is not utilized. So we have to make sure they understand clearly what those letters are, what they mean. Identify steps and deadlines. I think sometimes we treat financial aid like they're soft deadlines, and they really aren't. We have to get the information to the students. They know when and what to do. Like right now, we're already knee deep into FAFSA work, and I'm seeing articles telling me that our students aren't filling them out as quickly as they normally would. We've got to stay with our students consistently. Developing a student-centered approach to financial aid planning. We keep saying this, the clarity of it. Provide clear and accessible information on debt accumulation. Each year, the students should know how much money they've already borrowed as they begin to borrow more. Number two, focus on the FAFSA. It's not a one and done. And some students believe, oh, I don't file the FAFSA because I never get anything. Levels may change. Now that we do a prior year, things may actually change. I encourage all students to file their FAFSA. Just give them a snapshot of what the university is assessing their need to be. Offer financial literacy workshops throughout the college experience, not once in the first year. This is critical, like I said earlier. We seem to do a great job with our organizations now, helping students get into college. But their processes every year, I've had students say all the time, oh, I did it my freshman year. Is it automatic? No, it's not. Our financial literacy workshops should be not just literacy, but also researching scholarships, looking at that debt accumulation, and make a plan on, as they work, how they save. Provide debt repayment workshops for seniors. This is critical because as soon as you begin paying, the faster you can actually drill it down. So often our students believe that, oh, financial literacy is a component of orientation and that's it. No, it's an ongoing process. On our campus, we bring Scholarship Foundation in every year, and I'm here to tell you, we never have less than 150, 200 students attending to learn more about in-depth work the scholarship can be or what their loans have to be. Here's understanding the two pieces. Prioritize need-based aid. We seem to do a great job, and right now we're all having a conversation with the test optional year that we're experiencing right now. So did test optional really talk about need-based aid, or did it just give a different kind of mission standard? Number one, the Pell Grant does not keep pace with rising costs. We discuss research all the time. The Pell Institute noted that had the Pell Grant stayed in connection with, it should have earmarked and indexed with Coupa or earmarked and indexed with inflation, it'd be over $25,000 right now. The Pell Grant is barely $7,000. We have to quit assuming the Pell Grant is going to be enough for our need-based students. Most need-based aid comes from state and institutions. We've got to make sure that as we prioritize in entering students, we prioritize what need they have. And we say this over and over again. Access 3 is a great program. It is criminally underfunded. For institutional strategies, cover full tuition and fees for bottom half of student income profile, and not the slick last dollar scholarship we often use. Let's have it up front. Make awards automatic, no need to consistently apply. And number 3, provide flexible emergency aid and make sure students know about it. I was so excited just this morning to find out on our campus, we were paying the back balances of quite a few students to the tune of $800,000. Those students are going to be recruited back for the spring, making it flexible and making sure the students know about the aid, that it does exist. I'm excited about that part. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Melissa Findley, to keep us on time.
All right. Thanks, Trent. As Trent mentioned, financial aid can seem complicated and financial resources are so important for students. The last piece we want to talk about is the role of private resources and scholarships and working together to help students. Next slide. As Laura said earlier, through Degrees with Less Debt, we've learned a lot about how institutions can make college more affordable for Missouri students. However, this is where the village comes in. We realize there are significant financial aid gaps students face when paying for college. The Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation is focused on Missouri students attending Missouri institutions. Our programs are intended to really complement federal, state, and institutional aid. In Missouri, we also have other amazing partners, including numerous foundations and nonprofits who offer resources for our students. So we are really just one example that we're talking about. It's important we work together to assist students when they need it most. Additionally, it is so important that we work together to increase student access and awareness of these resources and programs. Students can't utilize our programs and others if they don't know about them. So at the Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation, we have some innovative and flexible, responsible programs as we strive to be part of the solution for Missouri students. And on the next slide is a summary of our resources that Missouri students and schools can utilize to help students. Our programs all have a need component, and funds run through the school's financial aid office. Our emergency grant is designed to provide just-in-time support to help students through an emergency situation so they don't end up leaving school. We want students to persist to a degree. If they leave, it's hard to get them to come back. And Finish Line is another one of our programs which was developed and informed through collaboration throughout the state. We kept hearing that back balances were holding students back from re-enrolling and completing that degree. So this program is intended to help students pay back a back balance so they can re-enroll and get across that finish line. We really make a focused, intentional effort to be flexible with our programs to ensure low-income students are getting what they need to complete a degree. And during COVID, kind of an example of that flexibility is we put more money into our emergency grants because that was where the need was. We also have an interest-free loan that helps students bridge the gap, that financial aid gap that they may have after the institutional, federal, and state aid. The program is really intended to help students who have the potential but lack those financial resources. We have two large scholarships programs, one for incoming freshmen and another for current college students. So our scholarships are available through My Scholarship Central, which Laura mentioned earlier. This is a central place where students can access it online. They click on where they are, where they live in the state, and the list of all of the major nonprofit scholarship providers in the state are listed with easy links to their scholarship applications. So we're really trying to make it easier for students to link to these private scholarship resources, all in one place, regardless of the scholarship provider. And as Laura, as you saw on one of Laura's previous slides, My Scholarship Central was started as a St. Louis graduates and is now a statewide initiative. I also want to mention that we have just launched this month a new program called My Missouri Scholarship Promise for low-income high school ninth graders. As they enter the program and meet college readiness benchmarks, they will be promised a $10,000 scholarship to go to a Missouri college. So again, just some examples of some of the private resources that are out there, and there are numerous resources. And now I'm going to turn it back to Laura to wrap us up and open it up for discussion.
Thanks, Melissa. So as we've talked about today, there's no one simple path to making college affordable for students. It takes a complicated set of puzzle pieces to come together: federal aid, state aid, institutional aid, private resources, and some of your own money, right? Just for students to put it all together to be able to attend college and to persist. Melissa just shared some information about private scholarship dollars, and we talked about institutional strategies today. One thing we didn't spend much time on is on state scholarship programs. And if that's of interest, we're having a webinar next week where we're inviting in the policy fellows from the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis and the League of Student Advocates to share some research they've done on state scholarship programs and some recommendations they have on how to make them more accessible, more equitable, so that college is more affordable for more Missouri students. And I'm going to put into the chat some information and the link to register if you'd like to join us next week. And that concludes today's presentation. Thought there's going to be a thank you in there, but there's not. And we really appreciate your time and attention today. We're open to your reactions, your comments, your thoughts, and your questions. And you can either put them in the chat or unmute yourself, and Nate will let us know that you'd like to share something. Thanks so much.
It does look like we have one question in the chat right now from Claudia Browner. She wanted to know if there was a link to the scholarship portal that Melissa had mentioned.
I'm putting it into the chat right now.
Perfect.
Yes, and it's called My Scholarship Central, and it's myscholarshipcentral.org.
And yeah, and we have some time for questions, so if anybody wants to put one in the chat, feel free.
Or if there's any institutional colleagues who are on the call with us and you'd like to share some of the lessons that you've learned in trying to make college more affordable for your students, that would be great too.
I'll just, since we have a minute here, I'll just mention a little bit more on My Scholarship Central. In 2020, the scholarship providers, it started as a St. Louis initiative, but in 2020, the scholarship providers from across the state had some meetings, came together, and really thought about how we can kind of redo the website and really make it one place where you can go and find all of us. So you might go to find KC Scholars and happen upon Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation and vice versa. So it is a work in progress. So we really just rolled out the statewide portion since October, and we're getting a lot of good traction, and we're continuing to meet so we can, again, at least send students to one place to find all of these great resources that are out here.
And I'll piggyback on that and say there's now over 100 scholarship and interest-free loan programs using the portal. They all award their own programs, but it's trying, as Melissa said, to put everything in one place for students. If you go online now, students can create essentially a profile, the common application that basically is the information everyone's going to ask for about their contact information, their GPA, and uploading their transcript. but then individual scholarship opportunities will ask for some specifics. Many of them will not actually open until January. So if students get online and say, oh, there's only a couple scholarships on there, it's because those are the ones that are open in the fall, but most will open in January. So it's still worth the time and energy to go ahead and create the profile now so they're ready to go when they do open.
Well, that's great. So I think, it's about 11 a.m. I just want to say thanks to our presenters. You guys are all great. Thank you to our audience. You have 10 minutes now, roughly 10 minutes now to stretch, grab a drink, grab a snack. Be sure to join us for our legislative panel. And it's certain to be full of lots of great information. So thanks again for attending this. Thanks again to our presenters, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Nate. Look forward to seeing everybody in the next session.
Thank you.